Hello, hi, and welcome to another episode of the Mandy Meyer Podcast. As per usual, this is a podcast where we chat all about your health goals, your fitness goals, getting a little bit fitter, creating a healthier lifestyle, and losing a little bit of fat in the process. As per usual, just a massive thanks from my side for every single one of you that always show up to listen to these episodes of the podcast that I put out there. And then to all of you who have started watching the video episodes of these podcasts, I honestly appreciate it. Thank you very much. Now, when it comes to creating a healthier lifestyle and losing a little bit of fat, you guys know by now that obviously I've been through all of it. I've lost the 40 kilograms and I'm currently in a maintenance phase, which I've been in for, I want to say, just over or just under 4 years, round about that mark. And I know the one thing that I struggled with, right? Obviously, there was a lot of different struggles, and I've chatted about all of that. I mean, all 230 odd episodes of this podcast so far are based on what I've learned through my fat loss and health expedition, and just trying to provide you with tips, strategies and everything else to help you. But what I want to chat about today in this episode is breaking that all or nothing mindset when it comes to making changes, because I know I am someone that really used to struggle with that all or nothing mindset, and I really thought that everything has to get done now. I need to tackle absolutely everything now. And I had that rigid way of thinking. And if something didn't go according to plan, like say, for example, hitting step targets or hitting calorie targets, I used to, in my mind, think, oh my goodness, now you've screwed it up totally. Even though there was 50 million other things during that day that I absolutely smashed and really won at, I would always focus on the one little thing that I didn't do. And I believed that everything had to be 100% perfect for me to be successful in what I was doing. And a lot of that came down to that all or nothing mindset. So in this episode, I'm really going to help you try and work on a way or figure out a way for yourself that you can start breaking that all or nothing mindset, knowing that all the small little changes that you make is going to add up to your massive success and major progress that is coming your way. Now, I know I've discussed this on some of the previous episodes of this podcast, but I always do believe that there always has to be a little bit of a reminder or a refresher just so that you can hear it again. Now, what I want you to start doing, if you have that all or nothing mindset, or you've got that rigid way of thinking, and you say your calorie target is 1,600 and you eat 1,680 calories, for example, a lot of the times what might happen is because now you've overconsumed, quote unquote, by 80 calories, you're like, oh, well, I'm going to throw it in the fuck it bucket, okay? Because, I've gone over by 80 calories, so what is the point of doing it? So that's what I mean when I say that all or nothing mindset or that rigid way of doing things. And that's where I want to introduce you to range targets. And your range targets don't just necessarily need to be for your calorie goals, for example. It can be for something like your steps as well. So your step goals, your daily step goals. And something that I use till this day, obviously I do that with my step goals as well, but when it comes to my maintenance weight, I also have a range target, right? And I'll explain that a bit more as we move forward with this episode. Now, if we look at your calorie goals, for example, I always use 1,600 as an example, but as you know by now that everyone's on different calorie goals. But let's just say that your calorie goal is 1,600, and that is your deficit amount. Most of the time, most of the calorie calculators you're using, especially the one that I have built, is going to place you on a 25% calorie deficit. So if you've got 1,600 calories as a goal, you can then set a range target, especially if you've got that all or nothing mindset or that rigid way of thinking. Now, if your calorie goal is 1,600 and you feel as if you go over by 80 calories, it's a train smash, what you can do is set yourself range targets. So you can be like, okay, my range target for my calorie goals is going to be, again, an example, 1,600 1,600 as the optimal amount. And then I'm going to have a sliding scale where it's going to take you to maybe 1,800 or 1,900, for example. What you could even do is work out your maintenance amount of calories, which again can be done on the calorie calculator on my website. So then you can have a sliding scale of calories, the range target, which is then probably 1,600 to maybe, like I said, 1,900 or 2,000. So you've got that wiggle room, right? And that really helps break down that all or nothing mindset, because then if you go over calories by 100, you know, oh, I'm still within range. I'm still within a deficit. So it's not a major train smash. And that's often where that mindset then changes from, oh, I'm now no longer going to chuck it in the fuck it bucket because I'm still within range target. Having a range target for your calories can also really help when it comes to, I want to say something like social events over the weekend, or even if it comes to a time like maybe where you struggle with extreme hunger leading up to the start of your period, you then know, I've got a wiggle room. You've got wiggle room within your calories to play around, to add a little bit of extra food on those days where you are exceptionally hungry, knowing that you are, again, quote unquote, for the lack of better words, not doing anything wrong. And that really helps remove that all or nothing mindset, or break that all or nothing mindset down. And it also helps remove that rigidness when it comes to tracking calories. So something like range targets can really be beneficial for a lot of people. I am going to add in a little bit of a disclaimer here and say that for certain people, right, you really need to assess what your mindset is. But for certain people, it might not work, and only you would be able to figure this out, because a lot of the times if you've got that sliding scale or that range target, you might then be like, okay, cool, I've got up till 2,000 calories to eat today. So if you see that there's a remaining amount of calories, you might then not stick to the optimal amount, which is 1,600. So again, you would need to figure that out. I know it works really well for a lot of people, and they stick to that optimal amount of 1,600. But if they do go over it, then they're like, you know what, it's fine. It's within my range target. It's not a major train smash. I don't need to throw away the rest of the day. But if you're one of those people that log your food and you see, oh, I've still got 200 calories left for the day, but you're not hungry, but you're like, oh, because there's 200 left, I'm going to go and eat them, then that would be something that I would say you would need to have a look at and just be very well aware of that, right? Because a lot of the times, like I say, the range target is more there to help break that all or nothing mindset, to help you realize that you don't always need to be spot on and rigid about absolutely everything, but then you'll know that there is an optimal amount and then there's a ceiling amount, for example, and that just helps. Okay, now when it comes to your step targets, you can do pretty much exactly the same thing. So myself, for example, on any given day when I am allowed to exercise, my step targets or my range target would be 12,000 steps to 15,000 steps per day. So for me, my optimal amount would be pushing closer towards 15,000 steps per day. But then I know on days like a Monday, for example, I will be exceptionally busy with work, working up to maybe about 14, 15 hours for a Monday. Then I know, boom, I'm dropping down my step targets for those days. And again, it just really helps break down that all or nothing mindset. Something with your step targets as well, that range target works very, very well. For example, on days if you've got, say, a gym day worked into the plan. Oftentimes what happens on a gym day is you're doing weight training, so your steps aren't going to be as high on those days as what it would be if you maybe go for a walk or for a run on certain days. So then you know as well, okay, the days where I do weight training, my steps aren't going to be very high, so they're going to be towards the lower end of the range target that you have set for yourself. Because I know what happens if you set a step target for yourself of 10,000 steps, right? And that's the only target that you have. And you either, like, you don't hit that target, for example, because you've been busy at work. Oftentimes you're like, oh, well, I've only got 8,000 steps, so what's the point of doing this? Whereas if you've got a range target of, cool, 8,000 steps is what I know I can achieve on a daily basis if I do sort of challenge myself a little bit, a very little bit. But I know that if I push myself a little bit harder, then you know, okay, maybe you can get 11,000 steps. So then you would set that range target of 8,000 steps to 11,000 steps per day. It really helps break down that all or nothing mindset. If you don't get 11,000 steps for the day, but you get 10,000 steps for the day, you still tick in your boxes, you're still creating consistency, and you're not feeling shitty for not hitting step targets, right? So again, anything you do, you can set yourself range targets from optimal to a ceiling amount, or from this is the entry level steps that I want to get per day, and these are the max steps that are super optimal for me. So again, like I said, it just breaks down that rigidness. It really doesn't, like I said, a lot of the times when you're not hitting targets, for the lack of better words, you start feeling a bit like, oh, this is not worth it, and I'm not capable of doing any of these things. But those range targets, man, oh man, I can tell you now, it makes such a difference. And like I said, even when it comes to my maintenance for my weight, I've got a range target for my weight, for example, and that would usually be around 70 kilograms to 75 kilograms. So I know at any given time, I'll be hovering between 70 and 75 kilograms. The moment I see, oh, I've gone up to 76 kilograms, that's where I'm like, okay, Mandy, let's pull it back a little bit. And something like that also just helps remove the pressure of saying, oh, I constantly have to be doing every single little thing spot on for this to work. The moment you have range targets, the moment you have that little bit of a wiggle room, it adds more sort of, I want to say, balance, if that's even the right word. But again, going back to the range target for a maintenance weight, it's just like, you know what, I know that I don't need to be rigid all the time. I don't need to do everything perfectly, for the lack of better words, all the time. I know there's going to be days, weeks, months and years where I'm going to hover maybe around 73, maybe around 74, maybe around 70. And again, from a mindset perspective, having range targets really, really, really does help remove that all or nothing mindset, that all or nothing way of thinking. It helps you break down that rigidness, and it really does help you continue ticking those boxes. And what is the beauty of ticking boxes? You are creating consistency. And when do you stop ticking boxes? You stop ticking boxes when you feel like you are not achieving anything, or when you feel like you are not hitting those non-negotiables. So why not make it a little bit easier for yourself and be like, let's set a range target. Let's give yourself a little bit of wiggle room. And then you'll see the magic that will happen. You'll be ticking those bloody boxes every single day, and you will just create that power of momentum. You're going to be creating that consistency and breaking that all or nothing mindset of, everything has to be done perfectly. And if it's not done perfectly, then what's the point of doing it? No, there is a point of doing it, and you are doing it. On that note, I'm going to love and leave you like I usually do. Keep smiling, keep laughing, and keep being kind to one another. Much love, your friend, the queen of range targets, Mandy.